go. Come on, sing it out. We stand and lift up our hands, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. We bow down and worship him now. How great, how awesome is he, and together we sing. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. The earth is filled with his glory. We stand and lift up our hands, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. We bow down and worship him now. How great, how awesome is he, and together we sing. Everyone sing. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. The earth is filled with his glory. Yeah, it's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. Yeah, it's rising up all around. It's the anthem of the Lord's renown. And together we sing. Everyone sing. Let me hear you. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. Holy is the Lord, God Almighty. The earth is filled with his glory. The earth is filled with his glory. The earth is filled with his glory. Amen. I ought to just let y'all sing this tonight. You're my hope. You are my hope, hope like no other, hope like no other, reaches to me in the fullness of your grace, in the power of your name. You lift me up, you unfailing love, stronger than mountains, deeper than oceans, reaches to me. In the fullness of your grace, in the power of your name, you lift me up, you lift me up. In the fullness of your grace, in the power of your name, you lift me up, you lift me up. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the sky. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the sky. You are my strength, strength like no other, strength like no other, reaches to me. Again. You are my strength, strength like no other, strength like no other, reaches to me. Amen. Here and now, here in this moment, here and now, I turn to you. All that my searching heart has longed for can be found, 'cause you're in this moment, here and now. What majesty, what mystery, the God of all eternity stepped into time and gave his life for me. Your hand is seen in galaxies, yet your spirit dwells in me, so vast and yet you're still within our reach. Here and now, here in this moment, here and now, I turn to you. All that my searching heart has longed for can be found, 'cause you're in this moment, here and now. There is nowhere you can't be found. Nothing on earth could ever turn to you. All that my searching heart has longed for can be found. 'Cause you're in this moment, here and now. 'Cause you're in this moment, here and now. Da, 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 da. It's kind of like a lullaby, isn't it? La, da, 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 da. One more time. La, da, 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 la, da, 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 la, da, da, da. Amen. You dance over me while I am unaware. You sing all around, but I never hear the sound. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. And how you love me. You paint the morning sky with miracles in mind. My hope will always stand, for you hold me in your hand. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. And how you love me. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. And how you love me. How deep, how wide? How deep, how wide, how great is your love for me. How deep, how wide, how great is your love for me. How deep, how wide, how great is your love for me. One more time, sing it out. deep, how wide, how great is your love for me. Come on. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you and how you love me. One more time. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you and how you love me. Amen. Beautiful singing, folks. Hey, at this time, love on one another right here. We do it every week. Holy kisses accepted. I will not be ashamed of you, Lord. I will not be ashamed of the Spirit. I'm gonna worship you. I'm gonna worship you. I will not be ashamed of you, Father. I will not be ashamed of you, Lord. I will not be ashamed of your Spirit. I'm gonna worship you. I'm gonna worship you. Blow, wind, blow. Burn, fire, burn. Blow, wind, blow. Sing with me. I will not be ashamed of you, Father. I will not be ashamed of you, Lord. I will not be ashamed of your Spirit. I'm gonna worship you. I'm gonna worship you. I will not be ashamed of the Father. I will not be ashamed of you, Lord. I will not be ashamed of the Spirit. I'm gonna worship you. I'm gonna worship you. I will not be ashamed.
Sorry, guys. I was just updating my fantasy football real quick. We'll get started here in a minute. How is everybody? Wow. Well, thanks for coming out tonight. I'm going to apologize in advance to you guys. I've had a kind of a busy week. Some of you know my grandmother passed away last Thursday, and I don't know if there's any clean way to say it, but that side of the family is a little crazy at times, and not a whole lot of people get along over there. So in the midst of how everything happened, stayed pretty busy just kind of working with my dad and helping him get everything situated and protected through kind of all the chaos that kind of erupts over that sort of thing. And so the service was yesterday, and it was a very, very long day, which I know a lot of you guys know you've experienced stuff like that before. But anyways, I didn't get a whole lot of time to work on stuff, and I even called Tommy and said, "Hey, dude, I know last week you said you had some scriptures, but you just never got to them. Maybe you should just come do what you were planning to do." He didn't even show up, much less agree to do it. So, I think he's working in Gainesville or something like that is what he texted me. And Steve called me today and said, "Hey, man," left me a message. He said, "I got good news and bad news." And I got excited because I was thinking the news was he was going to be back and I wasn't going to have to do this. And I told Melanie I really cannot remember what the good news was, but the bad news was they were leaving late. And he said, so I'm not going to be able to get back to watch you there, and meaning here. And I told him, I said, no, if you would have shown up, you would have been up here. Like, you got 34 years of this stuff you can pull out. But anyways, we'll just go ahead and start off with some prayer, and we'll see where we go tonight. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this evening. I thank you for the people who came out tonight, Lord. And I just know that Wednesday nights are tough, Lord, and they're easy for us to make excuses on why we can't be there. And it truly is a sacrifice on Wednesday nights. And even like what DJ said on Sunday in his message about what do we do for tradition and different things. And Wednesday nights is not a traditional thing for most people, and it's something that we all have to consciously decide on, that we're going to make a commitment to be here. And Lord, I just want to thank those that are here, that do come on Wednesdays and that come consistently. And because, Lord, it does. I mean, it shouldn't matter how many people are out there, but it definitely makes it easier when there are people out there listening to you when you're up here talking. And so, Lord, I just pray that you will be with everybody here tonight, that you will bless them, that you will give them back their time, Lord, and that you will provide all of us who are tired with some great sleep tonight, Lord, and that you will be with everybody that is downstairs, and the children and the workers and the teachers, and that everybody who is here tonight can walk away with something, Lord. And I just pray, Lord, for your guidance, and that you will speak tonight. In your name I pray. Amen. So, like I said, with my grandmother passing, somebody asked me a minute ago if it was expected. And I mean, kind of the, I guess, joke of it is that my grandmother's been dying since I was 15. I mean, it's the family's a little dramatic at times with some things. And so even in a conversation with my dad, when I knew that her and my grandfather were both having to be in the hospital at the same time, I said, it's just so hard for me to know when it's time to take it serious, because it's happened so often. And last Thursday, I picked up my dad to drive us down there, and even then I was talking to somebody on the way to get my dad and said, oh man, I just got to go do this real quick. I just, kind of again, and a little bit of what DJ was talking about, I just need to check it off the list. Said I went down to the hospital, saw everybody, and did the thing, and get back home and get to work. And on the way down, I got a text from my sister that I didn't share with my dad right away that said, hey, I don't know how far away you are, but hurry up. She's not going to make it through the day. So we ended up going a little bit faster when that text came through, and to make sure that I got us both there in time. And we did get there, and it was, I don't know, it's kind of weird to say that you've become like numb to funerals and deaths, because that just means you've experienced too many of them. But I mean, that was as a lot of you have this year. We've all been doing a lot of funerals. For me, it was the fourth one this year. I mean, the other three were all men from this church, and then there's probably even more I could have gone to, even tied into this church. So it was different, I guess, going down and expecting it, but getting down there was so weird. I haven't had the greatest relationship with that side of my family, and goodness, probably 8 or so years. Just some stuff happened, and not saying that things haven't been forgiven, but sometimes it was just easier just to stay away, I guess. And showing up there was about 15 people back in ICU, which I was surprised the hospital would allow, but at the same time, I think the hospital knew that there was no way that they were going to be able to say anything to these 15 people. And it was a different experience for me. We were actually there when my grandmother did pass away, and I've never seen a person die before. I guess I've been there soon after, but have never seen it happen. But I shared with my dad how it was such for me, a peaceful experience, because I think of where I am with my beliefs, and because I know where I am with my beliefs. But seeing all the family there, I mean, people I haven't seen in a while, and it was so weird for me in a way, because none of the negative stuff came into my mind, but it was rather all I could think about was all the fun Christmases when we were kids, and the big gatherings that my grandparents would have, and they would go all out. I mean, these people were both such great great people, and for their grandkids, loved us every year at Christmas. Santa Claus or an elf would show up that we were talking about as a parent, and I remember the elf, but he showed up and it looked like he drank a little eggnog before he had come over, and we were all young kids, and he was asked to leave before I think he finished his whole routine. But I remember he said his scooter was parked on the roof, and I kind of wonder this day and age if that scooter was on the roof. But they just did so much. But it was, for me, seeing kind of everything happen. And for me, my prayer was my grandma was 93 years old. And man, I don't want to live to be 93. I just want to go ahead and put that out there, the open airways. But just getting to hear the stuff that she had experienced and lived through. I mean, she was a big part of the civil rights movement. And they even said at her funeral that she did every single thing except march. She was one of the first ladies, and I can't remember exactly, but in some type of political arena or something, and just really got out there and did a whole lot. And my grandfather has been a very good attorney here in Atlanta for years, and there's awards named after him, and just great people. But I'm very much believers, and so watching all this happen, and it was great because they are part of the Presbyterian Church. And if you ever meet my grandfather, he will ask you, the second you walk in is, are you a Presbyterian? I'm not sure why that's so important to him, but whenever he would ask me those sorts of questions, I would answer in the way that he needed me to answer at that given moment. So I don't constitute that as a lie, but more as a, just here with my grandfather. He also would ask if I'm a Georgia Tech fan, and I could say, okay, for right now, we can do that. But anyways, I guess just watching the things is so much just went through my head, and I don't know where every family member stands on this sort of thing. And even having conversations with my dad throughout the process, and it's amazing, those who are at peace with things, how you can take these in to those who are not at peace with things. And by peace, I mean believe in Jesus. And I knew where my grandmother was going, and at certain moments I sat there and I wondered if some people were not okay with it because they knew that would be the last time because of where they chose to stand or what they have chosen to believe. And throughout the few days of planning everything, a lot of people had different opinions about what should take place and how and when and all those sorts of things. And it was just interesting seeing to me how quickly things take over at funerals. And it's kind of something that makes me sad that so quickly there are timelines and things that must be done. And I'm not sure, I guess it makes me sad that people can't stop for a second, and it doesn't matter who's in charge of little things. But I wasn't asked, and I'm okay that I was not asked to say anything or do anything for the funeral other than being there for my father, which was probably, some of the greatest experiences that I've gotten to have with my dad was through this. And he and I haven't always had the best relationship, but it's definitely been something that we've both been working on and building on this past year or so. And it was even one of those things that I feel like has been set up the last few years of me and my dad trying to have more conversations and talk about things. And just as this came about, of being able to talk to him a little bit more about God. And as I even text Steve one day and I said, I think there might have been a small door open where I can figure out some things on where my dad stands because I'm not fully sure. And you guys have heard me talk about the list before. My dad's definitely been one of those that's on that list of someone who I probably need to find out where is he and where does he stand on this. And then when you experience something like this, which we all have, is it makes you think a little faster and sort of thing. But I sat there and wondered what I would have said, and not about my grandmother, but out at her service. And I remember going to funerals when I was younger and leaving, you'd always hear the preacher, someone talk quite a lot about Jesus, and it would get on my nerves sometimes. And it's weird now because that's almost what I feel like exactly needs to be talked about at funerals, regardless of who's in attendance and what gets on their nerves about it, especially if the person is a believer who we are celebrating their life. But I sat there and one time I said to my dad, I said, look, I need you to know that where she is gone is that it is much better than anything she's ever experienced here, better than the symphony they went to, better than this or that or the clubs. And my dad's response was, and this is back on, I think, Thursday, and he said, well, I guess so. And I said, okay. And I said, well, Dad, I promise you it is. So I thought I would share a few things with you that I was going through. And since she was 93, I'm going to read you 93 different scripts. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just and the crowd clears out. No, but I wanted to read you a few things from the Bible, and you can follow along if you want, or we'll put them up here. It might be easier if you just write them down and revisit them later on. But some of these are from the ESV, some are from the NIV. I'll do my best to remember to tell you which ones. But the first one here is from Revelation 21:4. And here it reads, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall they be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away." Revelation 21, verses 21 through 25, it reads, "And the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each of the gates made of a single pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass. And I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it, and its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there." Revelation 22, verses 1 through 5 reads, "Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. Also on either side of the river the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be anything accursed, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads, and night will be no more. They will need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever." So first, when I read these, and this, I guess, is stuff that I would want every person to know. This sounds like pretty phenomenal place right there, both how it is described in its beauty of what is going on, and also how there is no mourning, there's no more crying, there's no more pain, because all these other things have passed away. And I would say that there is probably no stress, there is no worry, there is no anger, there's all these things that Jesus has told us not to do that I have to assume do not take place in heaven. And right there alone is enough for me to say that's a pretty darn good place that I wouldn't mind hanging out in for a good time. Could be there for a long while. In John, verse 3, and I wrote the page number down in here, so I'm assuming that means I'm supposed to turn to it. So we are going to see what exactly I was going to read here to you. But in John, chapter 3, verse 1, here, and this is from those first three that I read you, those are from the ESV version. So your NIV is very similar. There might be a few tiny little word changes. This next part, John chapter 3, verse 1, is from the NIV. But here it says, "Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, 'Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the miraculous signs you are doing if God were not with him.' In reply, Jesus declared, 'I tell you the truth, no one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again.' 'How can a man be born when he is old?' Nicodemus asked. 'Surely he cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb to be born.' Jesus answered, 'I tell you the truth, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and the Spirit. to me, what that represents is baptism. And then I don't know. There's all these arguments. I consider them petty arguments that come up in the Christian world of then people want to get into, what exactly does that mean? And does that mean your child, growing up in a Presbyterian church, I was baptized when I was a baby. From my family's perspective, that was enough. When I was baptized at Branches of Christ back in 2009, I didn't get any rebuttal or anything from my family, but there was definitely me having to explain some things to my family about that. I had a few things that, I've thought about here recently. Not sure why. A lot of times people ask me, Lindsey, I hear you're preaching. Friends will ask me, or different people, what kind of preacher are you? What kind of preacher do you want to be? And I really don't ever know how to answer that question. And even in a conversation today, I said, I don't want to try to be like DJ. I don't want to try to be like Steve or some other preacher I heard. I even joked with DJ saying I actually ended up staying in on Sunday and I was streaming him. I said, man, I can't be like you. You get so excited and high-pitched. I'll tell you what, man, I was perked up, and so was the dog next to me, glued in, watching you, but I'm not, and that's okay that I can't be, DJ, or I can't be Steve. And so I also, in DJ's message, and he and I had a conversation about it this morning. You guys don't flip there because we're going to come back to this John, but where he was in Mark chapter 15. And he touched on it for a second, and I know he even said, man, if I could have had more time, or he could do a whole series on this one part. But if you haven't listened to DJ, you need to go listen to what DJ was talking about so that you would understand this. But in Mark 15:15, and this is when Pilate is asking the crowd of people, what do you want us to do with Barabbas and Jesus, and which one do you want us to release, all that sort of stuff. And what it says here is, wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. And DJ, I knew, was getting to a different point, but when I heard that, wanting to satisfy the crowd is how he made his decision. I mean, now there's another part that says, he left it to them, and Pilate left the area and let the people do whatever. But I wrote off to the side, what is it that you do, or rather, what is it that you don't do to satisfy the crowd? And I'm careful at this, and even in my own state of mind, and not just with my grandmother, but just other stuff. I mean, I kind of, I don't know if it's a little bit of the critical spirit or different things. You can pray about that, but is I don't want to be the preacher that does things either to satisfy the crowd. And I don't mean this in a negative sense, but really when I preach, I'm really not too concerned about what the crowd's going to think. And I always get people that will send me, hey, go watch this preacher. Oh, man, look how bold he is. Look what he does. And yeah, he is. He's great. He's bold. And I always tell people, I said, he's also talking to 2,000 people, and when he's done, he doesn't stand at the front of his church and shake everybody's hand. He disappears. And if you try to email him, you're going to get a response from somebody else, and you're never going to get a cell phone number. So be careful on what you want and your boldness. And I'm not saying Steve is not bold, because he is, but sometimes people, I think, want Steve or other people here to hammer a point home a little bit harder than maybe they do. But at the same time is to remember that man is also there to answer to you. So I'm not saying I'm going to say something and go out the back door tonight, but I'm just kind of, there are moments when I wish, I want to be more bold. I want to explain things. I feel like in my life now, it's my job. If there's people I know that don't know Christ, if they don't know heaven, if they don't know what will happen when you die based on your decisions, that maybe it is time for me to be a little bit more bold in getting that point across. And maybe some people may not like that too much, but at the same time, at the end of it is I have to answer to somebody else. And I do my best to try to continue doing certain things. And even with the brother not too long ago over coffee, we were talking about, how do you stay motivated with different things. And I told him, I said, I just like to assume that maybe he's coming back tomorrow. And how I'm trying to think the word that I'm allowed to say, how idiotic would I feel if I dropped the ball today and then he did come back tomorrow. And he looked at me and said, man, we were like, it's like the 2-minute warning of a football game, man. You just had to take a knee, and it was done. But you couldn't stand with me for just that much longer. And that's one of the things that constantly goes through my head, especially when you think of a young person dying. I mean, somebody that's 93 is very different. But when you think of a young person, we don't know how much time we have. So I'm not sure why we wait so long for that knocking on the door, as Tommy said last time. And I've said to Steve before, is it confuses me if people have been coming to church for a long time and they say they believe in Jesus, but they refuse to be baptized. It confuses me. We can have a whole separate conversation if you want to about that at some point, but it loses me a little bit. Is I'm not sure what you're waiting for. I'm not sure what is so hard, but at the same time, what Steve said recently was, I think he said, I can't remember the exact numbers, but something along the line, I think 80% of the population says, yes, I am a Christian, but only 18% actually do what Jesus commanded us to do. And I said to somebody, I said, does that mean only 18% of us are going to end up in heaven? And that makes everybody stop and think for a second. And the Todd Gurley situation, whatever, these football players, they get in trouble, NCAA rules, and somebody asked me, I'm a big Georgia fan, I'm a big Todd Gurley fan. Obviously, dude's a stud, star running back, apparently broke a rule, gets suspended. Someone said, what do you think about that? I said, well, if you're asking me what I think about it, I think Todd Gurley knew what the rules were by the NCAA, and Todd Gurley made a decision to play a sport that is under the umbrella of the NCAA. And if Todd Gurley did break a violation of the NCAA, regardless of how ridiculous or petty I think it is, then Todd Gurley has to serve that punishment. And I don't know what will happen. I mean, not to go down a whole sports thing, but I think it's a great example of this. But so apparently he did enough to be suspended for 2 games. He's got reasons that I've heard, reasons that would break your heart for why he did it. Good reasons why he actually did it, if it's true. But he violated a rule. He served his suspension. Finally today he made his first statement apologizing to the university, the fans, and saying, yes, I want to come back. And now they're trying to reinstate him. But I say to people, okay, so you want to follow a Christ who tells you what your reward is, this eternal life in heaven where there are all these great, wonderful, amazing things. Well, here are some things that you have to do. I'm sorry if you think some of them are ridiculous. I'm sorry if you think some of them really don't matter all that much. But I don't know what to say to you when you come to me and I turn around and say, I did not even know you because you didn't think this one little thing was important or that. And by no means am I condemning anybody in here or out there, because that's just as much for me and a challenge for myself, and the hypocrisy that I could show by even saying that scares me to death. But I wonder if we've become so relaxed of how this all works. And I wonder how many people are going to be so surprised and say, sorry, I don't know how many more times I could have pointed this out or put these people in your life or led you this way or done you this. And I kept telling you, here's what you're going to get. But you had this one thing or these few things or whatever that you wanted to keep going back and dabbling in a little while. And it does scare me. And it scares me because how in the world do I preach to people who are seeking God that message without them saying, well, forget it then. I can't do it. And I feel like the only way to do it is to continue to share the gospel and what you get in the end. And man, with Todd Gurley, people all came out, why couldn't you just waited 6 months? He's going to be worth millions of dollars. Why can't you just waited 6 months? Well, because sometimes when you don't have certain things and you've never experienced certain things and all of a sudden it's put in front of you, you're not thinking 6 months into the future. And I went through the other day, a lot of you might know what LinkedIn is. It's basically like a business Facebook. I mean, people now, that's how people almost want you to submit your resumes nowadays, is just send us your LinkedIn profile. It's got your business stuff, and it can be a great tool. A lot of people can come write you references or whatnot. And for some reason, I was reading through some references I had on there, and there was a common theme from some of these people who wrote really nice things, who actually used to report to me. And some of it was great in the sense that they said I could make a decision while at the same time being able to look way into the future of how this would affect certain things. And that's how I was able to look at certain software and say, no, it's got to be this way, because if this happens way down the road, how are we going to do it? But then they also said, and not in a negative sense, but it concerned me a little. They both said Lindsey was very black and white. You always knew what he wanted. You always knew how to get it done. You always knew when he wanted it, which I am very black and white. I'm a very black and white person. Even the conversation with my dad, I said, one of the things I have to work on is I will die for the sake of principle. And that's not necessarily sometimes good. Sometimes I can't let stuff go because the principle of the matter was this. And so I am very black and white. A lot of you know with the Bible is one of my big things with it is I want to be black and white with the Bible. I don't want to need another book to interpret it. I don't want to have to go to a professor to interpret it. If I go talk to Steve, I want to say, no, you show me in here where that is. I don't want to know where you saw different stuff, watch the History Channel, whatever. I want to know it from right here. I should be able to understand it. Jesus even said little children can read this, think like children, and you should be able to understand this. There are times, even the thing from Sunday of what DJ said, wanting to satisfy the crowd, I've read that a gazillion times and have never caught that part, that he based that decision off of wanting to satisfy people. Now, granted, if he wouldn't have done that, well, then we wouldn't have had Jesus, or maybe somebody else would, but I don't know. As I told DJ, he still sounds like kind of a jerk to me, regardless of if he, in a way, saved the day for all of us by wanting to satisfy the crowd. But I'm not sure how we got on this whole rant, but I look at things, guys, with the church, with our lives, and just wonder what's it going to take for people to make certain decisions. What are you waiting for? Seriously, what do you need to know? What do you need to know about anything of how this works? It's a pretty simple concept. DJ hit on it's simple. You have to love. It's hard to continuously believe. It's hard to. A lot of you don't know this. I decided to start my own company back in February. It's been a crazy ride of learning new stuff, dealing with business partners and all these things. And people will say to me, "What's the hardest part about it, Lindsey?" And I said, "The hardest part about it is my mental mindset." I said, the hardest part about it is to keep telling myself that there's a reason for this, and I'm not after a goal to get rich to please myself. I am after a goal to get rich to be able to take care of other people. And I've talked to members of this church, our leadership, about you need to pray for this, because if it works, you'll be rewarded. And so, but it's that mental mindset of where I do feel like God has been a part of this. I feel like there was a reason this time last year, actually, I was telling you guys all how I left my software job to go to this nonprofit. It's where I learned a bunch of this stuff to start this company. And I questioned, man, was I really hearing God? Did I make the right choice? Because that thing didn't go how it was supposed to. And now the entire division that I was a part of at that software company doesn't even exist. And so it's looking at that of, hey, I'd be in the same spot right now if I would have stayed or not, except now I'm in a spot where I at least got 8 or 9 months of building this other thing behind me on. But it's that mental mindset, and it's the same thing with your walk with God. And the challenge of it all is our mental mindset to believe that there is something better out there. And the world does stink at times. I don't want to get up here and sugarcoat it, and it stinks at times. It stinks now. The stuff that goes on, the crud that all of us deal with, whether it's your job, whether it's your relatives, whether it's your kids, whether it's your church, and it's those times when it's like people just stop and think for a minute. If it's all gone tomorrow, what have you lost? And it depends on where you stand in this. So back to John here, when he talked about you'll only inherit no one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again. I tell you the truth, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised at my saying, you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. How can this be? Nicodemus asked. You are Israel's teacher. said Jesus, and you do not understand these things? I tell you the truth. We speak of what we know, and we testify to what we have seen. But still you people do not accept our testimony. I have spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? No one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life. So now we're starting to see there's a catch to this. You can get all these great things that were talked about in Revelation. And it's interesting to me that all this stuff is, because I reworked this, as you saw, as I read you the Revelation stuff first, of giving you the good stuff first, of here's what it's going to be like. No more sadness, no more pain. It's going to be beautiful. And I think it is going to be beautiful. I don't know if it'll be like streets of gold, like the Wizard of Oz type of thing. I mean, I think it's going to be something beyond our imaginations. And flip with me now over to John 14. Here, John 14 reads, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would not have told you I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and I prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am." And then he finishes by saying, "You know the way to the place where I am going." The next line says, "Thomas said to him, 'Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way?' Jesus answered, 'I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him.'" Again, I say to people and other people that, and I guess this is, I don't know if this message is for more for Christians or who it's really for in that regard, but for us that are here, everybody that shows up here, I mean, you're coming here for a reason. And you're coming here because you definitely believe something. And I got to say that through our preacher, you know this stuff that I'm even talking about. Through our preacher, you know who Jesus is. Through our preacher, you know who God is. And so I urge you to make the decision, if you haven't, of what you want to commit to. And DJ, again, I mean, I love both DJ and Tommy's message together. Were really amazing. And even listening to them, if you listen to them back to back, of here you had Tommy, this came up here and gave his emotional testimony, but shared so much about where his life would have been if he would have not made these decisions, and what he should do when God does knock on the door. And I'll tell you guys now, and I'm sure you have this week, but if you haven't, please do, and please continue to do so, but pray for Tommy. And I told Tommy, is like, hey man, you gotta, be prepared the following week. I mean, you take a big step when you get up here. I used to always call these the crying lights, because every single time someone has come up here, me included, I mean, I think just now, I'm going to say it now, I'm going to probably cry in like 5 minutes, but I feel like I'm just now kind of at the point where I can get up here and not cry. And I pray that I don't, because then I just turn into a mess. And Tommy, actually, he's got a good cry. I liked it. I mean, it was solid. You could still speak through it. With me, it's a complete shutdown, and I got this high-pitched trying to talk through the tears. But I tell you this to pray for Tommy. I mean, that's a huge step. And I feel like there is no, my dad, was sitting here talking to this Presbyterian minister yesterday, and this gentleman has been in the ministry for a long time, and of course my dad, just doing what he does and wants to brag on his kids, starts telling this minister how I started my own nonprofit and how I'm also an ordained minister. And I was just, Dad, here we go. And he didn't ask me what seminary or theology school I went to, which was good, because I don't know how I would have responded to him in the most positive. I would have said, Steve Pettit University. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a little place up in Ackworth. He always tells me it's something like the School of Hard Knocks. I don't really know. But I mean, but honestly, even this man, when he looked at me, it was this weird Bond type thing. I wanted to go up to him later on and be like, oh, it's okay. I probably would have mixed this up a little bit, though, when you did that one part. But I didn't do that to him. Just shook his hand at the end, told him thank you. But I mean, it's great, especially my father, after coming through the Presbyterian church, you don't preach like this. I mean, what I'm wearing right now, it's a little bit, and you guys don't wear what you're wearing either, so let's not just laugh at me. Like, we'd all be a little bit more dressed up right now if we were in the Presbyterian church. And then they got the big organ that you can't control the volume on. Like, that was unreal to me. That is loud. And singing hymns, I know Carla likes them. That was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, Melanie was next to me. I couldn't follow along as much as I was trying to sing these songs. I'm not sure how I did it as a kid, but those are difficult. Those are difficult. I really give credit to those folks who can hold the correct beat and know when you're supposed to hold notes and different things, because I was all over the place. But anyways, we got a little off track there. Sorry about that. Go with me, everybody, to 1 John. And we're going to chapter 5. And we're going to go to verse 11. And here in chapter 5, verse 11, it says here, and this is the testimony. God has given us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. He who has the Son has life. He who does not have the Son of God does not have life. I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. If anyone sees his brother commit a sin that does not lead to death, he should pray, and God will give him life. I refer to those whose sin does not lead to death. There is a sin that leads to death. I wrote off the side there when I had read this sometime, that what my interpretation of that was it sin that you don't repent from that leads to death. I think that's one thing people forget, with Jesus. I mean, he is forgiving. He is very graceful. He is very loving. But if you sin, there's another catch to the whole thing of the, how it works here is you have to go to him in repentance. And even in a conversation, I said to somebody, I said, what if we repented every time we sinned like we do when it's a major sin? I said, you guys know what I mean by that. When you've done something and it just eats you up, to the point that it brings you down to your knees, to where there's tears in your eyes. I said, what if that's how we repented for every sin? And I always go back to cussing for some, not that I'm cussing, like cussing is one of the sins. Maybe I always go back to it because maybe sometimes I do it. But I'll be honest, if I say a cuss word and I then apologize to God, it's not the same as other stuff. And it's weird how we have these different levels of what is sin and what is not sin and what counts. But that's where I put that down there, is the sin that must lead to death. In my mind, and I could be way wrong on this is just from Lindsey's head, and maybe it's just from God talking to me, maybe for somebody else it's something else, but I feel like it's sin that you don't repent from. And that's what I always wonder with people, even in this funeral and stand there in the hospital. What was amazing to me is still seeing some family members that wouldn't acknowledge other family members. And I thought to myself, where do you have to be in your life that in the moment of death you can still have that kind of hatred? And I questioned it, because in that moment for me there was no room for hate or darkness. I mean, for me, it was almost like this euphoria of feeling of wow, of feeling like what I believe is the Spirit was definitely there to come and take my grandmother away, and to be there in that moment when she left, and to feel that is, like I said, I've even told myself, like, don't even stop for a second and think about any of the bad stuff. Just let whatever this is just stay in there and remember all these things that I can remember as a kid and a teenager and a college student, and even beyond that of with my family of the great stuff. And don't let anything, because the truth of the matter is some of the things that people get upset about are sometimes just the littlest things. Somebody said something, and sometimes people, they don't speak correctly always at times. We all, blow off and say things and lose our tempers and different things, but it's that moment when I feel like you should be defeated if you're one of Christ. That moment of death, I mean, there should be no way that you could focus on any other thing, and even taking a step back and watching everybody and just seeing it. I mean, I don't know how to describe like the happiness I felt, which was weird, and where I got upset was then seeing my grandfather and my dad get upset, of seeing them experience that, and watching my grandfather, who had been married to this woman, it'll be 66 years next week, and just, man, just hearing him of what he wanted in that moment. But I also know with him is he knows where she is, and he knows he'll see her soon, and I think that feeling has got to be so great for him, and even for them to know that the family was together. But it was remarkable that Thursday how it happened. But then even over the time of the chaos and the different things, and people wanting this or that, or this music should be played, or this song should be sung, I'm sitting there like, you got to be kidding me. How are we talking about any of this? You guys can't even follow along to these songs. Trust me. No. But it's amazing though. But then as time went on, and when I picked up my dad yesterday to head down there, and we got in the car, he said, he goes, I'm at peace now. And I told him, I said, Dad, that's good. And he goes, I don't know if I'll ever forget this from my dad. He said, son, I've learned that I have to accept life. And he goes, but I've learned that God is life, that he is everything. And he goes, so I guess what I've learned is I have to accept God's way of doing things. And to hear him say that, was pretty remarkable, that it at least it gave me a firm stance of where I feel like I can stand on what my father has believed. And I don't know if something happened since her death. I don't know if this has been something he's been working on. But it gave me that. And then we definitely had our jokes, and I said, Dad, you're exactly right. I said, and sometimes it's pretty confusing. And then he told me, he goes, I know some people say I'm crazy. And he goes, but I'm Lieutenant Dan crazy. He goes, I've definitely called God down here a few times to explain some things to me. And he goes, and I know I'd get my butt kicked, but I at least would try to get in at least one blow and let him know I was a little upset. And that is my dad. And if you know him, it's not as crazy as it might sound. But it was remarkable of just seeing this evolvement of what can come out of it. And I, thought to myself, man, if this is, and my dad saw how much I was there to almost protect him from other people, and it was weird. I mean, just weird biblical stuff, and by no means am I saying me and my dad are God and Jesus, because we were far from that. But, but even at moments when I thought, man, you're not getting to my dad unless you can come through me first. And it made me wonder if that's how Jesus is sometimes. Like, listen, you're not getting to Dad. You're not getting to them. Now, at the same time, there were moments when I said, Dad, you can't let that get to you. They didn't mean it that way. You're taking it wrong. And I wonder how many times, and again, I understand that everyone's got their happy scriptures of God is slow to anger and all this stuff, and God's happy. Well, God also split open the desert and swallowed a bunch of whiners who were complaining. He also dropped a ton of water on some Egyptians who were chasing his people. So, if that makes you fear God, that is a good thing because we are supposed to fear God. And I haven't really understood what that has meant until recently with Steve. But there are times when I don't doubt for 1 second God has questioned whether it's time for a pothole to open up into a large sinkhole the size of my car and swallow me whole in there. And there's a part of me that has thought that Jesus is up there saying, wait, Dad, hold on. Let's not hit the red button yet. I think we might got something with this guy. Let's give him a couple more tries. 6 strikes for this one, Dad. So, but it's amazing, though, if you can see this correlation of God and Jesus. And people always say, what would be your first question? I think my first question would be, why'd you send him down here? What were you trying to figure out that you didn't already know? And was it just so that then you could say, like, oh, someone else has experienced it? But for me, I'd be like, why? And then you knew what would take place, but that was it. But you're God. Like, you could have done all this without Jesus. I mean, you could have decided, okay, no, they just need to repent to me, and I will show them grace. But I'd love to know, like, you sent your son out of all things, knowing what was going to happen. Jesus even knew what was going to happen. And it's even at times when I see all the hatred in the world and the stuff that goes on and hear things that people say. And I do even, want God, ask God to forgive them. And for me, it's stuff that I'm still working to understand and figure out how I'm supposed to react to it and accept it. But I have 2 cousins who are openly gay. And I don't dislike them for it. And the sad part is I think, what would other Christians say to me? Not other people. I think, what would other Christians say to me if they knew that? And they knew I preached. And hearing one of my cousins get up there and she read just the greatest story of my grandmother, and she said in there, and I won't lie, it made me nervous when she said it because I wasn't sure if anybody would react in a negative way. But she talked about when she came out to my grandparents, that their response to her was, well, are you still our granddaughter Allison? And she said yes. And they said, well, then we still love you. And I think, I don't know why I always get on this, but the whole thing of church and homosexuality needs to just go away. Everybody focuses on it so much, and I don't know if it's because you don't understand it, which I'm not saying you need to, or maybe you don't like it for whatever reason, but it's no different than any other thing in the Bible. And I had a conversation with Melanie last night, and I said, I got to figure this one out. And there's not an answer that I'm ever going to be able to give to all of you on it, but I told her, I said, I hear some people say, well, the difference is, Lindsey, though, if those people come to church, they are still going to actively sin. Okay. I have a feeling there are boyfriends and girlfriends or unmarried people who have come to church who probably spent the night together that Saturday night, and they're probably spending the night together that Sunday night, but I'm not going to kick them out of my church. I'm not going to do these things, and I think it's a time when we got to understand. Somebody wrote a blog that a well-known preacher put up, and it said, it said something about, the church's demise or the church's attention shouldn't all be focused on homosexuality. And then he goes on to this whole thing and talking about sin, and I almost wrote him back and said, you should have changed your title to just saying the church should not be focused on your sin. And his whole thing was that we should be focused on the gospel. And I hear what he's saying, and I think it goes back to DJ, is our job here as Christians while on earth is to love and accept people, not to have to understand things. And Steve and I have a very unique relationship in the sense that he can talk to me very directly, and I think he understands that sometimes I need to be talked to very directly when I'm in a moment or worked up or don't understand something. And even recently, I was bold enough to talk about, I just don't get it, man, how I'm trying to do all this and other people are doing all this, and we're both all going to end up in the same spot. I'm not saying that's a great thing to think. And Steve said to me, and I wish I had it written down where it was, where Jesus one time said to one of his disciples, why are you concerned with that person's doing or what I'm going to do with them? And I think that's where we have to take our minds to, in this life, because the second we start dividing lines and drawing these things, we allow darkness and hate to get in. And according to what is in heaven, there is no darkness in heaven, because you don't need it. Because of the love of God and the light of Jesus, we will not need that. To go on here, just to wrap this up, going to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. You guys don't have to turn there. Here it says, and this is from the ESV, it says, "For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in heavens." And what that's talking about is our earthly bodies that are our tents for God, or that are the tents that we live in while we're here. And once they are destroyed, is to keep our faith knowing that there is a building for us that God has made that is in heaven. That's not built by man's hands. And then as we talk about all these things that we would want in heaven, and all these things that we would love to achieve, and all these things that we would love to have, and I'll take, like, I mean, you can keep all the nice design stuff, just give me this pain-free, stress-free, worry-free place. Give me that. Like, I can sit in an ugly place and have that. But I love all the beautiful stuff there too. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, it says here, "But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined." So take that in, the heart of man imagined. So all the things that just went through your head when we talked describing this, it's still beyond our imagination. Even how well it's described. I mean, I can picture this river and these trees that have different fruit every month. That's pretty awesome right there. But whatever I've imagined it's going to be way beyond that. Way beyond anything here. But it says, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. And there's the final catch to the whole thing. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. You got to commit to Christ. You got to love God. You got to love people. And then this is what you get. And if it's enough, then stand firm and keep going for it. But if there's some other things that you struggle with, I really suggest you talk to some folks about it and you ask people to describe more to you, because life is short. And in the end, we don't get to ask for a redo. So happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Does anybody have any prayers or praises?